Hey, well, welcome, guys. Welcome back to another episode of The Collision Live. Doing our Monday show on a Monday rather than our Tuesday. That we switch things up. As Daniel here, as always, and once again, joined at the table by Sam Camp.
Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. I was on vacation all last week, and much needed.
Suffering in the sun and sand.
Suffering on the beach. Generally unplugged. Came back and kind of surprised that there wasn't a whole lot of pop culture that happened this week. Nothing, or at least nothing kind of groundbreaking. This is the story that we got to be talking about. But I think there was some interesting stuff that
a lot of political news, very little pop culture.
Yeah. The marriage between the two of those is not.
Yeah.
Is always present as well, and we'll get into that. But yeah, there's a couple. I think there's sort of interesting questions that I think is just kind of looking back, trying to take in the news from a missed week. And I think it raised some more kind of general questions about just pop culture and the relationship we have with it, the way it influences society or maybe doesn't influence society. So why don't we just jump right into it and discuss it? And here's the question I would have for you, for us to kind of start breaking it down. It's sort of a chicken and egg thing. Does pop culture, the entertainment we watch and books we read and games we play, all of that, does that kind of shape and influence society, or does society influence kind of the pop culture itself? What comes first? If you
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in retrospect you can look back and see, I think particularly about like TV shows, let's say, and how TV shows may feature things that were perhaps really progressive for their time, but further down the line, society has changed, and it's like, oh well, that's not a big deal anymore. Like you think back to way back to like the Dick Van Dyke Show, where the couple, they actually had like separate beds, like so when they do their nighttime routine, and they go, whatever. Sometimes there was something funny that happens at night, but they're sleeping in like separate twin beds, just because it was like, well, that's, it's not appropriate for television for a married couple to be in the same bed. And now if you look at, say, whatever TV show is on, it's like, well, that's nothing. Like that's not even considered edgy to even like to think about that sort of thing. And I think
because they're time cap in a way, I think pop culture can be like a time capsule. You go back and watch an older show or movie, and you kind of get an insight into what the culture was like at that time. And that's kind of, with all of the pop culture and kind of engagement with it, that's one of the main questions to wrestle with is, does pop culture just reflect the culture that it's in, or does it actively kind of shape and change the culture? And is it, can it do both perhaps? And I think there was a couple things I saw this week that kind of raised both sides of this. There's one, if you follow me on Twitter, I tweeted this out this morning. There was an article, a survey done by a group called Define America, and their kind of motto and the name of the survey was "Change the narrative, change the world." Kind of encapsulates this idea that if you change the messages of pop culture, then kind of by extension, the wider culture is going to adapt itself to fit. And again, the survey itself was focused primarily or exclusively on views of immigration, kind of looking at several different TV shows that featured kind of immigrant characters. And as they surveyed people, they found that people that watched more of these shows kind of more frequently were more likely to post on social media or kind of take action. Here's sort of one of their summary claims: is TV shows with nuanced immigrant characters and immigration storylines can shift attitudes and inspire people to real life action. And one of the things, as I read this, it's interesting because my question, I guess, and one of the things the survey doesn't get into is, so is the fact that people are watching these shows, is that changing their mindset, or are people with that mindset more naturally kind of predisposed to gravitate towards shows? Because I think, you'll probably agree with me that we tend to kind of gravitate towards things that affirm what we believe.
Or yeah, not even necessarily affirm what we believe, but I think as far as like entertainment and art, it's just stuff that we find interesting. So like but yeah, I mean, I think obviously affirm what we believe, but I think even more broadly, it would be like just entertainment that we find entertaining. And so I think if it's entertainment that's really goes against what we believe, then I guess you could say, yeah, we tend to shy away from that. But I think if you're surveying these people who watch these shows, they're already predisposed to be watching these shows. So I think there would be some statistical methodological,
Because kind of the example I
questions.
in my tweet, when the example I threw out is, does the fact that people that watch a lot of religious faith-based shows, is the fact that they are also the most likely to post religious stuff on their social media, is that because they watch these shows and that influences their thoughts, or is it just sort of
Right.
natural that someone that posts a lot of things, believes this stuff, is going to find themselves drawn and enjoying shows?
Well,
that
I
promote
I
that?
think, and I didn't read the piece that you posted, but I think we can often try to draw correlation when or causation out of something that may just be correlated. Like people who post about uh, immigration also watch these TV shows. That doesn't mean that like the TV shows are changing these people. It just means that the likelihood that if you're posting
Yeah.
about immigration, you're probably also watching these TV shows.
And again, it's one of those sort of like, I don't think there is necessarily a clear answer, because I think we'd both agree that on one level these shows do change us. I think if you look at
Yeah.
kind of some of the way, the ethics and kind of the beliefs in our culture today, you can almost like backtrack those, from more extreme to less, and kind of back throughout pop culture. Things that would have been shocking then become normal. Like, shows do have a way of sort of influencing us and influencing kind of the way we think. But again, it's not, sometimes I think like in this survey, it tends to lean pretty heavily on, like these show, if you just change the stories, then that's just going to, almost compel people to have to act a certain way, which again, I think is maybe not as neat and tidy as that, but
Yeah.
but I do think, because there's another kind of a, again, we're not going to get in, this isn't a political show, we're not going to get into that, but with the Supreme Court nominee, there was another article that was posted, kind of declaring that the book The Handmaid's Tale, and now the popular show, was inspired by this kind of religious fanatic group. Again, the irony of it is that article posted a little amendment at the bottom of the article that actually it was a different religious group, but it wasn't actually the one that we're talking about. But again, this I think especially The Handmaid's Tale, but we've seen in other like The Resistance, kind of the hashtag political, kind of inspired out of Star Wars, the more recent Star Wars movies. But what do you think it is about kind of pop culture that maybe it isn't necessarily influencing a change in society, but it kind of going the other way? These images, this kind of vivid, like, even like I don't think either of us have watched The Handmaid's Tale, but we could probably go and make a costume of it because we know what it kind of represents. What do you think it is? Why do you think it's about pop culture that kind of we gravitate to, kind of becomes latched onto these ideologies in our culture?
Well, I think at the end of the day, a lot of these like TV shows or movies, they're iconic, and I think partly because they've probably oversimplified things, and so they're just a real easy way to just sort of say like, oh yeah, like you can just sort of grab whether it's The Handmaid's Tale or hashtag The Resistance or whatever from Star Wars, then like it's just sort of a packaged thing that you can latch onto and then just like stick it to whatever political cause makes sense. And so and I think in doing so, it's easily relatable to everyone who's seen that or is familiar with whatever the storyline is. And so it becomes a way to sort of a surrogate for your thoughts on X, right? Like, so you just sort of like, oh, well, that's clearly just hashtag the resistance, and it's like, oh well, everyone knows what it is that you're trying to say, then rather than you having to go in and actually explain yourself.
Yeah, and I think again, if you get into, if you read much like psychology and stuff, I think we see the world through stories. I think that's why we've been telling stories, and we'll get into stories in a second with the next topic. But I think we see the world, we kind of process. This is how we're wired to think through story. I think that's God gave His special revelation in the form of stories because it's so kind of essential to how we process the world. And I think so I think pop culture, we need to be aware of it, as that's largely what we do at the Collision. It does influence us, and I think it gives us kind of gives us sort of these metaphors or images to help process for better or worse. I don't think it's always effective, but to kind of understand what we do think, kind of to latch on to and kind of help us make sense in a more simplified way. But speaking of stories, here's another one. This isn't this comment came out I think a couple weeks ago, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's just a cool dude. He's from Inception. He's been famous from his TV show back in the day. He's a pretty smart guy. He has a lot of interesting stuff to say, even if I don't agree with what he's saying. I think the way he says it's pretty good. But he made an interesting comment in an interview where he had to eat hot wings, progressively hotter wings, in the middle of the interview, and it's minus some language. It's
shout
good.
Out to hot ones.
Yeah, it's a good video. But here's a comment he made. He was asking about kind of storytelling. He's an actor, and this is what he said. He said, "The future of storytelling is going to be video games. I don't think it's going to be filmmakers who figure out how to do that, but video games feels like kind of the most groundbreaking storytelling." And then he goes on to say that video games are the stories happening in them are a whole different realm from anything we've seen before. And I thought it would just be interesting for us to kind of spitball for a second. Again, we don't know the future, but this sort of jumped out because we talked about video games a couple of weeks ago. That there's good stories happening in these games. It's sort of an ignored medium, I think, in entertainment, especially with Christians. I think Christians play video games, but we don't necessarily process or think through as much as we would, say, like a movie or a book or music or something like that. But what do you think about this statement? What is the future of storytelling? Do we?
Well, I mean, I don't know, to be honest, but I think I don't think it's like there's going to be one future of storytelling either. Like I think the future of storytelling is expanding, and I think it's more and more including video games, and it may be that's sort of the next iteration of some sort of a movie video game hybrid, which is already happening. And I'm assuming what he's talking about there is really more the RPG games where there's just heavy video content, pre-roll sort of scenarios that your character goes through.
A little deeper than like a Super Mario princess from the castle.
Right, but I think if you pair that with like say things like Animal Crossing or with what's happening with VR or augmented reality, there's a convergence, I think, of a lot of different technologies that are allowing the story to be ever more immersive for the consumer, for the viewer, or the participant almost, as we're moving forward.
And I tend to be, again, I'm an old soul in some ways. I still love my my old dusty physical books more than any other kind of entertainment.
You're so archaic.
So I'm just dragging my feet. But I get a little
good book. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's hard to beat, but because really there hasn't been significant, at least that I can think of, kind of leap forward as far as like entertainment and kind of storytelling. I don't know.
I think maybe
like if you include video games, that's fairly recent. But like before that, maybe like color, sound with because movies, like the effects and stuff have changed. I guess you could say that's a significant leap forward.
And there's now it's most movies are made digitally. But those are all, I think, incremental.
Yeah, and it's sort of as far as does that change?
That doesn't change the storytelling.
You could maybe say it's more immersive. They can do more things with technology. They can, they can show bigger worlds, tell different stories, I think, than they probably couldn't have done. But again, there hasn't been, and again, my kind of thought is I don't really know how much further you can go from where we are now. Like obviously technology will keep changing, but 3D, I don't know if you remember that was all the rage.
Oh yeah.
And now it's almost an afterthought.
Well, and so that's why I'm curious about. I think like, is VR going to get to a place where it even further immerses the audience in a story, whether it's an actual game that you play in VR, like you're part of the movie, so to speak, or if it's just a way more immersive movie, and if that would even make sense.
Yeah, I think people have like brainstormed. What if you're watching a movie and like it's the story's going on, but you have your glasses and you can look around and you can like see 360 and kind of see what's happening. My question is, do we want that? Do audiences want to be? Because I tend to think, if I'm thinking of what I want to do, like entertainment wise, a video game and sitting with popcorn watching a movie, there's still a gulf there.
Yeah.
If I want to sit and watch a story, I don't necessarily want to be having to make decisions. I kind of want to
well,
relax.
I think Netflix tried this. I think it was with a Black Mirror episode where you could, like, they filmed several different versions of, and you could like it was sort of
choose your own endings.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe just more novelty at this point. It's like, oh, that's kind of a neat.
It's a gimmick
thing. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, a bit of a gimmick, but yeah, I don't know. I think the work that's necessary on a video game, I don't think would be the same for a movie. Like, yeah, I think you're right. You approach the two very differently, and I think like the stories in a video game can be amazing, and I for what it is, I think it's great. But I don't ever see those, and I don't know if that's what Joseph was talking about, but seeing those sort of overtaking theater or movies.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall. I think, what I think, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, I think storytelling in video games is going to continue to grow and expand and become more immersive, almost existing on a parallel but distinct track from movies and books and kind of the traditional. This is the traditional way we're wired to kind of receive almost passively these stories. But I do think stories are getting more and more immersive and more more depth to them in video games.
Well, and I think they add. I mean, I think they're a huge bonus to video games. Like if you create this world and the story and this storyline for this character that you're playing or that's alongside the character. I mean, I think it's a great tool to integrate with video games, and so I think it enriches the video game experience for sure. But I do think they're probably two distinct tracks of entertainment.
Yeah, and I think kind of my takeaway again, it's kind of with our focus at the collision, is that I think we need to be aware that these stories are, even if they remain separate, they're reaching the same kind of quality and level of a movie. And as far as sort of going back to our first, as pop culture, do these stories influence and shape society? I think we need to be aware of these stories as well. And I think
well, because that's kind of where the money is too. Like that, we haven't talked about that at all, but there's a lot of money going into these video games and the production of the sort of the cinematography that happens between gameplay as well. And so like I think there's a lot of money to be made as well in video games, and so I think you see those getting better and better and more immersive and more story centric than perhaps what they used to be.
Yeah, and I think one of the difficulties that Christians are going to have as far as engaging these stories, being aware of what's out there, kind of joining that conversation. It's the same reason why we do movie reviews here. Sometimes we do book reviews. We haven't done a video game review, and it's the time commitment that it's. A Christian can be, hey, this is a movie that's out. That's
but I think I'm willing to make that.
Yeah,
commitment.
but I'm willing when the new Zelda comes out, I'll take the bullet and I'll review that. But again, it's hard to make that commitment to know what's in there and to join that conversation. But these stories are making an impact in society. So I think that's, as Christians, we're gonna have to figure that one out, how to kind of engage in that.
And my guess would be it's probably a much younger audience as well that is being shaped by video game stories. I don't know. That's purely
and even just
a guess.
Like
because I was way more into video games when I was younger, and I'm less so now.
But
that's maybe not always the case.
And I think we've talked before too that we're kind of, our generation, maybe a bit older, is kind of the first one that grew up really immersed, into even adult years, where it's become more acceptable for adults to play video games. That it's like our kids and stuff that are some of the first generation where the older generations are still playing games, and it's I think the stigma of it and those kind of conversations are going to become more and more relevant. But hey, this week at the Collision, again, I encourage you guys to check out, if you didn't get a chance to last week. I did in similar, but more from a biblical theological perspective, did an article kind of on wonder and how I think movies and kind of just good storytelling has the ability to kind of awaken this sense that we, kind of shake us out of our kind of dull life or routine, a very earthly existence, and kind of remind us that there's more. And why I think that's healthy. So again, if you haven't done so, check that out. Again, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, whether you're watching on Facebook, if you haven't liked the page, or YouTube, I encourage you to do that as well and keep up with all we're doing. But hey, what's going on in society that you notice? Anything stand out to you?
A couple things. Fleet Foxes released a new album, so go check that out. It's the whole thing streamed on YouTube.
Never heard of them, but
the other thing would be Hercule Poirot. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Agatha Christie's mystery character in all of her novels turns 100 in October.
Still going strong.
Still going strong. I think there's a new Death on the Nile.
I don't know if it was being postponed or not.
Yeah, but I saw a trailer. I saw a trailer for it. So those mystery stories keep giving, and so I thought that was kind of cool. That and I don't know what it is about those stories and just maybe just the mystery genre in general. It's just sort of a gift that keeps on giving, and
you don't
his character is just
see a lot of
so
them
fun.
His if you saw the first what was the train
Murder on the Orient Express. Yeah.
If you saw the movie version of that, he does a great job with that character. He hams it up. Here's one of the things I saw, which should be no surprise if you guys know me, is trending on Twitter a couple of days ago was Lord of the Rings Muppets. I don't know if you saw it. I don't know how this started, but bless whoever started it. But there's this whole discussion on Twitter for kind of recasting the Lord of the Rings with Muppet characters.
That would be awesome.
This is a collision of two of the loves of my life. Which
that would really.
It's got me curious to ask you, what if you could pick one movie or story franchise that would be improved by making it Muppets?
Ooh.
What would be the?
Well, I think probably some of the Marvel universe I think would be really funny as.
You could do Muppet Marvel.
Muppet Marvel. I think that would be really good.
It could still be the.
But I think Lord of the Rings.
MCU. Lord of the Rings. I guess the obvious one is probably Star Wars. You're already partway there. You gotta. Maybe they just do the reverse and it's all Muppets, but Yoda's like a real person. I don't know, but again, I just thought
that would be awesome.
We give Twitter and social media a hard time, but sometimes people come through on social media.
The internet occasionally delivers.
Let us know too if you're watching. What would you change if you could change any movie franchise or just a standalone movie that would be improved by making it Muppets? We'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and if you're good at Photoshop, go ahead and do that as well. But any final thoughts for us today as we?
I saw there's a new Sherlock Holmes movie, Enola Holmes. It's about Sherlock's sister, and I really want to see it. So
my wife
might be a review.
My wife watched it while I was in the other room reading Count of Monte Cristo,
which is fantastic.
So if you guys seen that movie, we might check it out if enough of you people are interested in it. I've seen kind of surprisingly positive reviews.
Yeah. So
the trailer made me question it, but maybe we'll check that out. If you guys have seen it, let us know if it's good and worth us checking out. But I think if that's all, I want to thank you guys for joining us again on a Monday. Again, we'll be back next Monday. every week at 12. So if you guys are free and on your lunch break or whatever, we'd love for you to join us. And again, feel free to share any thoughts you have in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel. Have a great week and continue to collide with your world for Christ.